Hello, good evening or afternoon, maybe morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to the first in our online career event series. I'm from WSET School London, which is the WSET's flagship APP, and we are delighted to be bringing to you a wonderful panel of people to talk to you on this first career event, covering really as much of the UK drinks trade as we can in an hour and a half. So it's quite a challenge for them, but really should give you a lot of insight into the different roles, the different opportunities that are out there. So we used to do these events in person and get sort of, I don't know, 30 people in a room. So it's wonderful to be able to do them online now and see, a good couple of hundred of you here from all over the world. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. So you will notice that there is a chat and a Q&A box. Please say hi in the chat if you would like to. We would love to hear from you. If you have questions, please pop those in the Q&A box. And this is what we'll be looking at the end of the session. Once everyone's had their chance to speak, we'll go through the questions that are there. This was being recorded, so if you do have to step out or you can't stay till the end, don't worry, the recording will be available on our website and on our YouTube channel from tomorrow. So that's it from me. Over to you, Mags.
Hello, good evening, everyone. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for making the time. Good evening or good morning, as Julia said, good afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. A wonderful opportunity to be able to share our experiences. I'm joined by some fantastic panelists. For the benefit of those who don't know me, my name is Magnavai Janjo. I do several things in the wine industry, one of which is I'm a wine educator with the WSET, the Wines and Spirits Education Trust, which offers globally recognized wine qualifications. I also run a small business, a small wine importer in the UK. So all those questions about, the challenges of importing wine in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of, post-Brexit, please throw those in here. We'll answer one or two of them if we can. We've got a vast array of talent and expertise in the room for this webinar. It's a much sought after one. As an educator at WSET, I've always been asked this question: well, how do I break into the wine industry? What are the job prospects like? What is it like to work in the wine industry? What roles exist in the wine industry? So we'll try and answer those questions as best we can. I'll just kind of mention the panelists and I'll give them a couple of minutes to introduce themselves. So we're joined by Elizabeth O'Kelly, industry recruiter and partner at Vinokelly Search, Jack Merrylees, head of comms and PR for Majestic Wine, and last but not least, Brad Madigan, managing director of Campari UK. So if we kind of go through in that order, I'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves. Give us your elevator pitch, 60 seconds, 120 seconds. Who are you? What do you do? If we start with Elizabeth, please, and thank you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you for that lovely intro, Mags. I'm Elizabeth. I run Vinokelly Search, which is a drinks recruiter. We're very much on the executive search model. In fact, I set this business up with my husband, who was in the wine trade, started at Majestic, actually. So 5 years ago, so we've just finished our 5th year. And before that, I had a 15-year career in executive search in other industries, commodities, the city. I hope no one's on from there, but they were far less fun than drinks, I can tell you. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And Jack?
Thanks. Hello. So I'm from Majestic Wine, which for anyone internationally who might not know of us, we are the UK's kind of biggest specialist wine retailer. We've got about 200 stores across the UK and a couple in France as well. I joined them about 9 years ago as a van driver in Swindon, and they haven't been able to get rid of me since. So I've kind of come up through the ranks, as it were, and I've been in the kind of head office role for about 5 years or so. And I suppose here, because Majestic, as has already been alluded to, and I know Mags, you were with us for a little while as well, we're kind of one of the industry trainers, and we see it as kind of one of our roles to bring people in and hopefully set them on careers in other areas of the wine industry. So hopefully I can kind of give some pointers around that as well.
Thank you, Jack. I think that's an amazing point. Jack started working, as a van driver of all things, and my route into the industry was, I worked on the shop floor for waitress for a very long time before moving into Majestic. So it's amazing to see those hard works, those hard long hours, finally yielding some sort of fruit. And Brad, sir.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, and fantastic to see such a number of people join. So my name's Brad, Managing Director of Campari UK. For those that don't know much about Campari, Aperol and Campari itself would be probably some of the brands that you would know. I've been with Campari 11 years now, in spirits for 16 years in total. And Mags, what you're saying probably from a journey, I started selling ice cream. So to end up now representing Aperol, it just kind of shows you that, the different backgrounds we do come from and how we do end in the industry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brad. Since you were the last to speak, I'm just going to latch on to you again. I think we're just going to kind of dive straight into the deep end. There's no point in kind of dilly-dallying. So could you give us an idea, an overview of how you got to your position? What does a day in the life of Brad look like?
Yeah, it's as I said, I started, I've got a degree in sports science of all things, Mag, which is totally unrelated to what I've got now, and different vision from when you thought where you'd end up. A couple of sliding door moments along the way, and kind of making that decision around whether to go and start my own personal training business or get some experience. Job came up with Unilever, started, was successful in that, was an ice cream sales rep for a couple of years, and then progressed. And then I had a boss that went over to work in liquor at Diageo in Australia, and ended up following him over, and yeah, another 16 years in spirits. I've had a couple of relocations in that time, so Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and now London, which has created opportunities. So, and you kind of look back on some of those and go, if you said no, where would you be? And lucky that it's all connected. So I'm a big one for, really taking the opportunities when they're in front of you. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and you do reflect sometimes and go, I wonder where I'd be if I said no to that, or I didn't go to Perth, or I said no to coming to London.
Thank you so much, Brad. I think that's again another keyword I'd like to highlight. I mean, with the wine industry, you never know where where that opportunity is going to lead, because wine is a global industry. We cover every corner of this planet, and I would say to those who are listening, those who are tuned in, something might come up. It may not actually be ideal for what you want to do right at that minute, but you don't know where that door might lead to, because there's so many different things we can do in this wonderful industry. Jack, if I might kind of swing back your way, I know a little bit about yourself, the work we've done together, kind of looking at your bio and looking at your kind of history, seems rather an odd route into the industry, or it seemed an odd route into the industry. Have there been any kind of key decisions, any turning points, any highlights that have shaped your success? Yeah.
Yes. It's quite an interesting. Sorry, Mike, I'm getting a bit of feedback on you there. Is that all right? I think probably the opposite to Brad. Actually, quite a lot of my career has been defined on saying no to other opportunities, because I actually, I've also got an entirely relevant degree to the wine industry. I'm a medieval archaeologist is my training, and I kind of jumped at a job with Majestic in 2011, 12, I think it was. Because at the time I was fresh out of university and just desperate to get a job anywhere, and I think I applied to building societies, technology firms. I got offered a job as a paralegal, and Majestic said, do you want to come and sell wine in our shop in Swindon? Well, actually, yeah, that sounds like something I can go and do. And the aim was actually just to go and do it for a year, and then go back into archaeology and do a master's and go off and dig holes for a living. And I just kind of caught the bug. And ever since then, other things have kind of actually, I saw the questions come through, and I was trying to think back to kind of defining moments that got me to where I was. And I remember a couple of months into working at Majestic in a shop, I actually served an archaeologist with his own business. And he said, what are you doing here? And we kind of got chatting, and, he said, well, come and work for me. Come and be an archaeologist. And, jobs in archaeology are incredibly rare. And I was only on whatever I was on, middle thousands a year, and I had the opportunity there to kind of go off, and I thought, actually no, I'm enjoying this wine thing for now. I'm going to see where this leads. And likewise, kind of other times things have come up, and I think I'm quite unusual in that I've stayed with Majestic for a little while, and actually it's starting to pay dividends now. So I now head up our entire PR, communications, social media, events, all kind of sits under me. And I haven't been trained for it necessarily. You know, my background is in selling wine in shops. And I think that's the amazing thing about the wine industry is actually, if you've got the passion, if you've got the interest, you can kind of get anywhere with it, really. You know, it's not like you're being tested on a daily basis for your, you know, scientific knowledge or your mathematical skills or anything like that. It's something you can't really fake. So there's no real getting around it. If you're not interested in the product, then you might as well go work somewhere else. But it generally draws people in who are incredibly interested and incredibly passionate. And it just begins to dominate your life because, you know, it's your friendship groups, it's what you study, it's what you work in. You know, it becomes your main topic of conversation of an evening. It's what friends invite you around for, that and the free samples you can bring. And it just kind of, and that's the, you know, and that's the joy in it itself. And actually, you know, I'm very lucky that I've been able to stick around for kind of 8 years and find a career in it. And it's got me to this position as well. But, you know, and that would be my kind of key bit of advice to anyone thinking about it is, you know, are you passionate enough at the start? Because otherwise you might as well look elsewhere, or you might as well, you know, try and find that passion in what you're doing.
Something else, yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Jack. I mean, after I'd kind of gone on my eulogy about, you know, taking opportunities and opening doors, never saying no and opening doors, and then Jack comes in and says, no, actually, you know, do say no. Thank you so much, Jack. Elizabeth, if I can swing over your direction, as a recruiter, you know, given that, you know, we can call you one of the gatekeepers of the industries, you know, one of the people, many people in the industries who I've sent countless CVs to. What do you enjoy most about what you do?
Well, it's all about talking to people, what I do, and that's how I spend my days, just on the phone, or, you know, these days on Zooms. Although I'll be honest with you, I try not to do that much Zoom because I could be on 20 Zooms a day. I'll end up with very square eyes. But it's all about connecting with people, and there's lots of ways to connect with people these days. You know, you can send them messages on LinkedIn. I get lots of CVs on LinkedIn. It's such a great way to get in touch with people because you don't need emails or phone numbers or anything like that. It's such an easy way to get through to people. But it is all about talking to people, and you can have a CV in front of you. Someone can have sent you a message, but you pick up the phone, you talk to them, and you have a lovely chat for even 10 minutes. You're going to find out 100-fold more about them, their hopes and their dreams and all of that. And really my job is, or I should say our job in our company is all about putting the right people in the right roles. And that's very much our ethos. Recruitment, I think, is seen as quite a murky world generally. And I won't talk about this for too long, but it's a bit of a pet point of mine that there are different sorts of recruiters. And I think that can really be confusing. But we are very much working for our clients, and we go out and find very specific people for specific roles. So we don't operate jobs boards or things like that. We're not huge high volume recruiter or anything like that. So we spend a lot of time talking to people, you know, and we call them searches. So on a search, I might talk to 25 to 60 people, and I might put 5 of them in front of a client. So it's really, it's all about talking to the people and really drilling down, because we work on these very specific roles. But that's the part of my job I love the most, talking to people.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. 2 keywords or 2 things have jumped out from kind of your bit and what Jack mentioned. One, communication skills. I think the entire panelists will agree with me that communication skills, it doesn't matter what part of the industry you are in, it's absolutely fundamental. Whether you're communicating with customers, whether you're communicating with suppliers, or you're communicating with your logistics team. You know, sometimes you might go into a supermarket. One of the things which we do is supply wines to the supermarket, and you see a bottle on the shelf. You might not realize just how much work has gone into getting that specific bottle in that specific shelf. And a lot of it is countless, and like Elizabeth says, countless phone calls and emails to, you know, back and forth, and things going wrong and you fixing them. Really, and it goes back, it kind of links perfectly to Jack's point about that passion. That if you don't have the passion for it, you know, you don't have a genuine interest in it, you will very quickly get bored, because the guys will back me up here, or everyone will back me up here, and that things rarely ever go to plan in the wines and spirits industry. So you've got to be willing to kind of knuckle down and get down in the dirt with it. And if that passion is missing, you will kind of fall apart. If I jump back to you, Jack, I was going to say, there isn't a single person in here who doesn't know who Majestic is, but then I looked at the audience and then thought, well, there are people from all over the globe, so there might be some people who don't know who Majestic is, but Jack has given them a lovely intro. A lot of us go into our local wine shop or go into our local wine retailer, and we always look at it from an outsider's point of view, either as consumers or we look at it as, oh, that seems like a kind of fun, cool thing to do. Yeah, what's the company culture like in Majestic? Are there any kind of clear career paths within Majestic? Say, someone comes in, I want to jump down my local Majestic. Are there any kind of routes to progress? And could you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So the nice thing about Majestic, or at least it's historically been the case, is that everyone starts at the same level. So we have in the past had people who started in, one of our previous CEOs started as a van driver as well. And so, sorry, I'm just seeing the chat. Fine Greek wine and mead, we'll come back to that. We have a very clear career trajectory, and actually we do a lot of internal recruitment and promotion. So you'll start on the shop floor. You'll be given WSET training. So I think we are one of the largest educators in Europe of people. I think we put through about 6,000 people through their WSET in the last 20 years or so. So we'll give you that training. We'll give you the confidence and the product knowledge. You'll work as small teams, which I think is really important. 4 or 5 people in a store, looking after potentially a couple of £1 million worth of business a year through that branch. You learn a lot in those little teams, I think, and you learn a lot about hard work. I mean, it's hard work. I'm sure you'll agree with me on that one, but also just about how to communicate about wine, which is, a really effective tool, because you will serve people all day who, some people will come in and be after first growths for their cellar, and other people will come in and they won't know the difference between grape varieties, or, they won't have a clue what they're looking for. And I think that's something that's really stuck with me, is actually, you never lose sight when you start on the shop floor of who actually is paying the bills, and that's the customer. And I think that is such an important point, because, I've worked in the wine industry for, best part of a decade, and I have sat with people in tables at events, and they are talking on such a different level to anyone I've ever met who's actually buying a bottle from me. And I think it's so important that you don't lose sight of that at any stage. And that's kind of what the grounding it gives you, is that, what are the stories that people are going to pass around when they're sharing a bottle on a dinner table, or whatever it is. So in terms of the kind of the general career path at Majestic, we have a hierarchy within the stores: sales assistants, training managers, assistant managers, store managers. You can then either kind of choose to stay in the retail environment, and actually we've kind of developed something called store partners, which these are people who run their own stores, have a greater degree of autonomy. They get a much larger bonus pot. They get a say in what ranges they want to stock in their branches. And so we're trying to give the impression of a bit of we kind of term it a franchise light. So it's kind of like you're running your own branch, but it's obviously a Majestic store as well. And then we have the kind of moving into our support center role. So we have people in, our buying team, Beth Pierce, MW, who kind of quite well known as well. I think we actually used to work together in one of those stores back in Bristol. And she's gone right the way through, and she's now kind of one of the most senior members of the buying team and a master of wine as well. We've got our retail operations director, who's been in the business, I think, 25 years. Again, started on the shop floor. So there's that. And then what we're trying to do as well is complement that with some external hires, because actually what we found over the last couple of decades is if you're just hiring everyone from the shop floor, you end up with people in finance and property who know a lot about selling wine and not a lot about...
Nothing about finance and property.
Exactly. So I think there is a balance, which is good, because, I mean, that means that you can adapt later in life and move into kind of careers with us, or kind of wine retail generally. And what you tend to find is the people who come from other areas, our CEO, who you've met a couple of times, his background's in DIY, and he doesn't know anything about wine, and he will tell everyone, I run the biggest wine company in the UK and I know absolutely nothing about wine. And he's proud of that, because he thinks that's quite good for the industry, for someone to kind of come in and shake it up a bit and do something a bit different. But you can see he doesn't, you know, he could probably run a much bigger company than Majestic, I would argue, but he's there again for the passion. And came to it very late. You know, he's only been in the industry kind of 5 or 6 years. And I think it can get you at any time. And I think that's what's quite interesting as well.
Thanks, Jack. I think the really interesting thing about your kind of bit there was, you know, don't be intimidated by the wine industry. You know, a lot of people go, that thing, it looks really fun, it looks really, really amazing, but I don't quite know if I'll fit. You know, listen, there are roles in the industry for every level of expertise. From a complete beginner, you can walk into a shop. And that's how I started, similar to yourself, Jack, where I kind of walked into my local waitress and go, I would like a job, please. You know, most of my friends were going off to university. I decided I wanted to go either into apprenticeship or into work. So, you know, and just by, again, another advice which I would give for people who are kind of looking to get into the industry, I think that role in retail, it stays with you for life, because you absorb so much by osmosis. There's so much I learned just by being in a shop. Great varieties, you know, regions, labels. You understand. You get an understanding of what customers like, what bottles are attractive to a customer, and ultimately, you know, in the industry, that's going to, you know, stand you in good stead. If I may move on to Brad, who I'm aware that you kind of work. Well, not kind of, you work in the spirit sector, and every time I look at the spirit sector, you know, there's always this kind of joie de vivre about it. It's exciting, it's lively. You know, I look at some of your adverts, I've seen some of the Campari adverts, and they're so colorful and so attractive, you know, some of the spirits adverts. Give us a little bit of a flavor of what it's like to kind of, you know, get into what it's like to be part of that sector.
It's probably easy to say, no 2 days the same, that's for sure. And you do get sucked in a way. The history, the heritage of the brands. You know, we deal with brands that have got a history of 100 years. But you know, conversely, we deal with brands that, you know, created a couple of years ago. So you know, you immerse yourself into that. You dive into the stories, which then becomes, you know, it builds that passion. And then, you know, I saw someone had in the chat, what's your favorite brand? It's like asking you to choose what your favorite son or daughter is. You can't, because they all play a different role in kind of your day to day. So yeah, that excitement, and you know, you're talking about that bottle of wine on the shelf, Mags, around, you know, seeing something in the team was an idea, and then walking into a Tesco or a Majestic or you know, an on-trade outlet and seeing that to life and consumers enjoying it. That's just where you step back and go, wow, I played a part in that. And that's some of the exciting things that, you know, we get to do. It's not all spritz and giggles, believe me. You know, there are tough days. There are days you go, why am I here? You know, that is really offset, you know, by the good days of, you know, that experience. So yeah, look, for me, it's that, you know, the heritage of our brands, the people. Because they do become like family, you know, when you work with people for a long time. And, you know, Elizabeth was talking about the importance of communication. That then leads into the importance of building relationships, whether it's internal or external. And you have to be able to learn to relate at all levels, and not just hierarchical levels, but all levels, as in customer, consumer, you know, someone that's delivering, whatever, suppliers, etc. And that is super, super important. I would say for me, the industry is still very much a relationship type of industry. Capability is super important. And I remember when I was younger, and you've got all this aspiration, and you want to, you know, break through the ceiling. I want to be promoted tomorrow. One of my bosses said to me, to take this as a context of what you're trying to do, you work with you. Because I was young, I was, you know, you thought you trample through, have all these tough conversations with people. No one's going to mess with Brad. And then you step back and reflect on that and go, hey, would I work with me? Would I want to be treated like that? So it's, you know, it's always, and I'm glad I got that early on in my career, because it was the most important pieces of advice that I've had.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Brad. And again, it comes back down to that point of communication. I couldn't stress that enough. You know, some of the, you know, one of our mantras, which we operate with, is, you know, anyone we work with, you know, would I want to go for lunch with that person? Would I want to go for dinner with that person? Because a lot of it, as Brad mentioned, a lot of what we do is relationships, is managing relationships. And you'd be amazed what a good relation, what kind of good graces a good relationship will buy you. You know, you might do something, as Brad mentioned, there are days which nothing goes right. And what you have to fall back on is your relationship, is being able to call in a favor, is ringing up a pal at the delivery depot and going, listen, I've really, messed up here and I need you to, pull strings for me. And what kind of gets you through that? It's the relationships. And it's same thing in Majestic. My stint at Majestic, there'll be times when, I was running, multi-destination Jack at King's Cross. And I'll be literally pulling my hair out because I have customers ringing me at 4:15 and we close at 5, saying I need my delivery in the next half an hour. Well, what do? You go downstairs and you speak to the delivery driver and you say, listen, dude, I need a solid here. And then, you buy him a beer tomorrow. So it's really about, that relationship is so fundamental to what we do, as well as everything else. Elizabeth, sorry, I'm going to come over to you. So, we've kind of had a little bit of a flavor for spirits industry and wine industry. So kind of practical tips. So say you're recruiting for, let's start with Jack's side of the industry. You're recruiting for a sales role for Majestic, for example, let's say.
Yeah.
How they do it. What are some of the tips for prospective audience members? What advice would you give them? How should they structure their CVs? Really kind of brief.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's a good point. Actually, it fits very well with what I do. So we focus very much on sales and marketing roles, and we do anything sort of related to that. So for example, commercial finance as well. We don't really tend to do any other finance functions, but it's a very sales-led function. So if you're going for a sales role, and this is a really good point, bullet points are really the easiest way to do your CV. Everyone hates writing CVs. If I had to write a CV now, I don't think I could do it either. Because when you come to write them about yourself, it's awful. You sort of sit there with a blank sheet of paper and think, what have I actually done?
What have I achieved?
Yeah, exactly. And we all have these aspirations, don't we? Every time I move jobs or get promoted, I'm going to update my CV. You don't. And it's on your mum's computer, her old computer, which is in the landfill or whatever it might be. So, the best thing to focus on, bullet points somehow are so much easier than paragraphs. So bullet point, numbers, as many numbers as you can put in. If you're in finance, numbers. If you're in sales, numbers. Marketing, numbers. Really, everything comes down to that because it's a product that we're selling at the end of the day. So fundamentally, you can have all these lovely anecdotes and put the anecdotes of, I worked on this product and this product, but what was the result at the end? Was it a success with 100% increase in sales or 20% increase in sales? Or what was the result? And you'd be surprised how many CVs I get from salespeople in particular who forget to put their numbers in, actually. And that really will completely make a CV. Other things that are very nice on CVs are the sort of about me bit at the end, the hobbies bit. I think that terrifies everyone because, sometimes people think, and we've all done it, I like socializing and spending time with my family. We all put that in and you think, how can I make myself sound fascinating? You absolutely don't need to. Leave it out if you want. One thing I've found that's really nice is sometimes people put in one interesting fact about themselves. And it could be from 20 years ago. I mean, I've had facts like, not me, obviously not me, I'm not that interesting, but, someone was a lead singer in a university band and they supported some fairly well-known band. Yeah, that's really fun. And that breaks the ice in interviews and often will break the ice when I'm putting CVs in front of a client because it's something to just hook onto. And I think it's all about the hooks, isn't it? To break it up for the eye and go, oh, and actually it makes the piece of paper a person, actually, and that's what we're trying to do, aren't we, at the end of the day?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. If I come back to you, Brad, if you could kind of highlight kind of 3 skills which you would say this, for someone, a prospective, an audience member who wants to work, looking to break into the spirit sector, what are 3 key skills which you say these are absolute must-haves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Max, I think that you could answer that on a number of levels, right? I think because if you go as a person, right, or what are the transferable skills I want to bring in, I think you have to be, I'd probably sum that up as in the openness to learn, okay? Because what kind of, the challenge in it, we'll talk about it tonight as in, how do I break into the industry when I don't have experience? Okay, so, a key part of that is what transferable skills do I have? And it's also, you know, sometimes we need to either take a sideways step or a little step backwards to be able to go forward in the long term. So I may, if I have passion, I want to get in here, take that transferable skills plus my ability to learn. How do they come together, and at what level am I targeting to come in? Is it right in terms of the expectations? Because it's kind of, you know, I get that a lot. I can't break into the industry. I don't have experience, which is okay, right? It's, you know, often I can teach you, or the team can teach you spirits. We can teach you the industry. That's okay. But that ability to learn your own temperament, your relationships, your communication, it can be more important than industry experience. But certainly that leveling of where do I want to come in? Am I aiming too high because I was doing X in another career? Because conversely, I think if you're in that career and you've got someone knocking on your door saying, hey, I want your job, but I've got no experience, what would your answer be? So
Right.
that's, you know, kind of that reflection sometimes is important.
Fab. Thank you so much. That's such a solid point. Yeah, especially when it comes to what I really picked out of that was, you know, the product knowledge. We can teach you the product knowledge. We can, you know, which you mentioned, you can learn about wine, you can learn about spirits. But, you know, again, going back to the point which Jack mentioned earlier is, you know, what's your attitude to hard work like? Because I tell you what, if you're in a shop floor, if you're in a bar, for example, serving, you know, Campari brands in the middle of rush hour, in the middle of, you know, whatever it might be, it's going to be hard work. You're going to break a sweat. So, you know, that aspect, you know, you got the wine industry, and every part of the industry, everything from production all the way up to sales, it's all hard work. It's all hard graft, but it's totally rewarding. And I'll just kind of latch on again to a point which you made earlier, Brad. You know, a lot of what we do in the wine industry, it's about creation. It might be a grape grower sitting in the middle of, you know, someone mentioned Greece, for example, thinking, I'm going to take this Greek grape variety and I'm going to stick it in this bottle and I'm going to look for this label. It's all about creativity. So there's a lot of, you know, you've got to have that kind of those creative juices flowing through you. And the ultimate is kind of walking into a supermarket, into a Majestic, into a whatever shop it might be, and seeing your product on the shelf. I couldn't explain it to you. It's such a wholesome feeling. You know, we've worked in so many projects where it's been everything from selecting the juice to selecting the bottle, the packaging, the dry goods, the shipping, the logistics, all of that. And then the whole cycle takes about 9 months. Then you walk into your local shop, you pick the bottle up and go, wow, that's, you know, it's a really kind of wholesome and rewarding moment. Right. We had a question come in earlier, which I've woven in here, and I kind of throw that to the group, to Jack, Brad, and Elizabeth. There's this kind of perception that the wine industry or the spirits industry is a young person's game. Are there any roles for kind of a more kind of senior citizen, or someone who's kind of in the second career or in the third iteration of their working career? You know, what kind of advice would you offer them? If we go Jack, Brad, and Elizabeth in that order, please, and thank you.
Sure. I mean, I think I touched on it a bit earlier with kind of some of the experience we've had at Majestic, that you do see a lot of people coming into wine at a kind of later stage of life because it is one of those passion areas that people are drawn to. And my advice, I suppose, to be brutally honest for a start, would be don't expect pay rises. You know, wine is I've been meaning to, you know, I've been wanting to say this from the start, but wine is wine is a very low margin product compared to some other areas. And, you know, nobody in wine is really in it to make a fortune. I think it's very much a passion. So I think there's setting an expectation there. Having said that, you know, there's plenty of other perks and all the other things that come with it. It's about making relationships. And I think Brad's point as well about just being mindful about who you're approaching. You know, nobody likes to feel foolish or threatened. You might have some incredible experience elsewhere, but you know, wine can be quite insular and it can turn its back on expertise if it feels threatened. And I think that's probably the same for any kind of, not exactly niche area, but anything that is people are drawn to because of passion. So it's about making the right relationships. It's about connecting to people in the right way, looking for the right roles. I mean, we get everything from, you know, it might not necessarily be a career change, but we see a lot of people joining Majestic when they're kind of in their 60s, 70s, just because they want something nice. They drive the vans for us all, serve customers, and just a passion. And I'm sure they probably spend as much in their stores as they make, but it's something that it just attracts a certain kind of person, I think, at different stages. And likewise, we've, you know, our board is full of people who have come from internal, come from places like Wix and Screwfix, and we've got kind of people who've joined us from ASOS and all kinds of people who've come in. And I think it's quite fascinating to see what attracts them. But the one thing they all have in common is passion for wine and trying to do something fun and interesting and not take themselves too seriously.
Thank you so much, Jack. Brad, if I may come to you, anything to add? Any advice for someone who's trying to break into the spirits sector, but it's kind of from a second, you know, it's my second career, it's my third career, kind of, you know, any advice for such an individual?
I think kind of anchor back, Max, to what I said. What are those transferable skills you're bringing? Because it's about knowing as much as what you don't have as what you do have. So you know you don't have industry experience or knowledge on spirits, etc. You might have, you know, some good, strong WSET qualification. You might have done a hospitality course, but what do you know about the brands that you're looking to sell? But that's important. You close that gap. Leverage your strengths. So what are those transferable skills? And there's a lot more than people realize, as in, you know, whether it's relationship management, account management with customers or supply, you know, so really I kind of think what is it might not be the ideal position I want now, but what is that pathway for me to break through, of which then I can prove myself and I can move forward. Yeah, I think, you know, and we're all guilty of it. I think, Mags, we want that sweet spot. We want that perfect. And I think we may let good get in, or great get in the way of good sometime. So you might just a little bit of a longer horizon to go, you know what, not ideal. I know I'm backing myself, I'm confident, and I know I can add value because I'm bringing these other skills.
Yeah. I'll come back to you, Elizabeth. I haven't forgotten about you. Both Jack and Brad have made two solid points, which I just want to kind of latch onto. In that, yes, both of you have mentioned that kind of stepping back to step forward, which is, I couldn't agree more with that. You know, again, Jack mentioned the point that wine is a low margin product, and I know it. But what are some of those? If I come to you, Brad, what are some of those money can't buy kind of remunerations which you get by being part of this industry? Because there are several. So you might sacrifice a fat paycheck, but what are some of those things which you get by being part of the wines or spirits industry?
Yeah, there's probably lots, Mags. Events. We have lots of customer activations, lots of tastings. That we go to, lots of brand and product knowledge. So, and we like to, Campari, we like to go to the breadth. So if we're learning about wild turkey bourbon, we want to learn about bourbon first, and we'll learn about our competitors. Because if you're ever lucky enough to go to Kentucky, go to the home of Wild Turkey or Jim Beam or Maker's Mark, all the master distillers know each other because it's about celebrating the industry, because they all make great liquid. I just happen to represent someone different. So it is that brand immersion that you get, and it's that you buy into the heritage, the passion. And then, like for Campari, we have, product samples. There's obviously incentives over and above. There's other forms of recognition, lots of events. We've got team incentives. So, we even, the other year we took the team to Italy for an incentive for 3 days, immerse in the portfolio. So there's lots of, it's not always, what we take home is important. But we call them the garnishes. There's lots of other garnishes on the way.
Dips.
Correct, Max. It's that make it great. We need to get paid, right? We want to earn as much as we can, but it's not everything.
Fair. Jack, what about yourself? In your journey, what are some of those things which, again, we're certainly not making what the city boys are making, but what are some of the kind of perks, the bonuses of working, Majestic or working in the wine industry in your experience?
I think connections and relationships with other people as well. I think I kind of touched upon it a bit in the intro that, you find that most of your friendship groups and most of your socializing and your interests start to revolve around wine in quite a nice kind of holistic way. The traveling is great when we're allowed to do it. The opportunities to progress as well. I mean, I've, through my time at Majestic, I've done WSET level 3, level 4, and I'm now kind of on the MW program as well. So there's not many industries that actually kind of, well, I'm sure there are plenty of industries, but it's, it opens up a whole new world for you in that sense.
Yeah.
And quite literally as well, I've been to been to Lebanon and all kinds of interesting places that I probably would never have had the chance to otherwise. I think as well, it does allow you a certain degree of kind of creativity and individuality as well. And wine is such a big topic that you can become an expert in so many different areas of it. I mean, for me, it's still kind of history and wine, and I do a bit of a history and wine blog, and, you know, just because I'm interested in it. But I know lots of other people who are more down the, you know, they'll have hobby vineyards, or they'll kind of make their own home brew, or whatever it is. And there's just all these other avenues that, because it's interesting and because people want to talk to you about it and they want to share a bottle with you, you kind of find other areas of connecting to it that make it more than just a profession.
Thank you so much, Jack. I think as a group, we are underplaying the travel part of it, or we are underselling the travel aspect of it, because we're part of it and we just kind of see it as part and parcel of it. But I think when we chat to, or certainly when I chat to my friends who might be working in a city or might have kind of other jobs which pay more, and it's like, this weekend I'm off to Italy, for example, and then, okay, I've got this trip to Austria planned. You get to see so much of the world. And like I really share this point with you, Jack. I get to eat and drink with people who I think, if I was not in the wine industry, there's no way on God's green earth I would have this experience. You get to travel around the world. You get to see so many different things. You know, everything from, you get to be one with nature, because everything which is kind of wines or spirits, it all starts from Mother Nature. So you get to see that kind of passion which a human being has with nature, and then brings that into kind of sales, marketing, branding, promotion, all the way down to sales. So you do get to be a part of a real kind of holistic industry. Elizabeth, if I may kind of swing back to you, back on the point which I made, which we kind of touched on, yep, about, you know, someone who is a kind of a mature adult who is in their 50s, in their 60s, whatever it might be, and they're looking to break into the industry. How would you advise them? How could they tinker their CV, or how could they tinker their presentation in an interview to give them that kind of leg up over, you know, a young, fit chap or chapettes?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably come at this question slightly differently to Jack and Brad. I would say, and I don't mean to cast a negative tone on this, but I would say that from my point of view, with the sort of roles I recruit for, breaking into the industry in your 50s and 60s is hard. And I think I just need to say that I recruit for very, very specific roles. So someone might say to me, Elizabeth, get me an e-commerce NAM in spirits. I need them to be covering Ocado, Amazon, you know, the other retailers. Now, these are very, very specific things I'm looking for. So it's, and often my clients really do want someone who is fairly steeped in drinks. And, you know, even within that, they want a wine person, they want a spirits person, they can be quite different. If someone is really intent on doing it, and you often find people who want to break in their 50s and 60s, they've had very successful careers elsewhere. They may have made plenty of money or paid off the mortgage at least, and they're thinking, oh, I can have a bit of fun now. I don't need to be climbing that corporate ladder. I want to leave the city, whatever. Absolutely fine. I think a great way to get in is through Majestic, through that way, because it's an awful lot of fun. You can enjoy that passion, learn about the product. I thought Brad's point there was very good, because it might not be that role that matches where you think, I can add loads of value, but it might be the next one that someone like me goes, actually, you know what? They learned all about their wine and drinks at Majestic. They did all of that. They really understand what customers want to buy. And then I can say, well, actually, do you know what? They're a really senior insights person. I can now go to my clients and say, you wanted a wine insights person with tons of experience. I can bring those two things together. Yeah. So I think Brad's point was very, very interesting there. It was looking a little way down the road, which perhaps if you're 55, you're probably thinking, I don't want to look down the road, I want to do it now. You've got plenty of time, but it's just sometimes that first step needs to be about the product more than anything else. And then you can move on to those juicy things.
Fab, that's really, really interesting, because what I get from that is sometimes there's no way around that hard graft. There's no way around that kind of getting into the industry. Yeah, you like they said, you've got to do your time. And we used to have this joke, you know, during my time in Majestic, like, you have to do your time. You know, you have to go in and you have to learn the product and you have to be customer facing, because that does two things. One, it gives you the experience and the skills that you will need down the line, and two, it actually answers the question, do I want to be part of this industry or not?
Sure.
You might do those 6 months and go, actually, it looked fun from the outside, I gave it a go, not really for me.
Exactly. yeah, and then you get, you know, headhunted in your original industry. Perhaps sometimes all you needed was a break from your original industry, you know, a sabbatical, do something fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Having said everything I've said, I probably need to caveat it by saying there are some roles where you can just switch industries. You know, if you think about very big companies with huge global brands, let's take Gallo, for example, you will see that they very often take people across FMCG, let's say, and you think, gosh, that's not similar at all. They were Muller Light and now they're Gallo Grocery, for example. But those companies can support those transfers because, you know, they're set up and the products actually align very similarly. The sort of resources and what they need are very similar, even though on the face of it, they might not seem to be. So there's a few caveats there. I don't want to flood of people going, actually, I just, you know, I moved across from, you know, ambient snacks or something like that. It does happen.
It is possible.
And I myself have put people in from, you know, Hain Daniels. Actually, I put someone into a wine company because they were a very big wine company with huge global brands who actually, interestingly, don't really recruit from wine because that's not where they see their transferable skills. So it does happen. It's just a little more rare. That's all.
Yeah. Kind of to buttress that point as well, there might be some people who are kind of tuned in or listening or watching. There are some things which I would say you don't really need any wine knowledge to do. For example, I'll throw that out there. I've got a copywriter who kind of copywrote everything which is on our website, copywrote all our text, has no wine experience. And we actually deliberately went out and did that because we wanted, right, what is someone who is not a wine person? How does this text read to them? And a similar thing might also go with, you know, packaging, designing packaging. You know, again, there's a whole industry in designing just the wine case, the wine box, because what we wanted to do, we wanted to be sturdy, to be rigid, we wanted to not break, we wanted to be able to last a rigid, you know, rigorous logistics supply chain. So you don't need that much wine experience. And there are those kind of niche pockets which you can kind of plug your skills from, you know, other industries across. Let me swing back to Brad. As MD of Campari UK, I'm sure you're not shy of, you know, tough days. So I'm just gonna come over to you and say, right, what are some of the daily challenges? You know, what's a day from hell look like? A really tough day.
Probably, you know, a call from Majestic saying you don't get enough trading terms, or you know, a delivery is gone. You know, it hasn't arrived, or got an order stuck in EDI. You know, there's a people issue. You know, Max, I think we've got to remember we work in alcohol. Yeah, and it's you know, you never want that call of someone being in an event and something's happened. So, you know, that's probably a day from hell that you don't want, because you know, we try and protect our team as much as we can. You know, I would say, you know, Teams at the moment is a little bit like that, or webinars or not webinars, but Zoom calls over the last 12 months. You can probably see the reflection in the mirror. I'm in the office today. You can see the state of my desk because it's just been rolling calls all day, coffee cups everywhere, papers everywhere, you know, and, you know, I think Jack Wood said it before, you know, I think any industry, you've got to be prepared you know, for hard work. It is what you put into it. You know, work-life balance is absolutely important, but the work sometimes has got to come before the balance. There are definitely days where you can take the balance and days where you can't. And you've got to be able to flex to that. It's really important. You know, we've probably got that flexible working culture at Campari. We had it before the pandemic, you know, 2 days a week working from home. And we'll assess what the post-pandemic world looks like. But, you know, I said before that every day is different, you know, and that's the excitement as much as it is the challenge.
The challenge, yeah.
I might get a call from the boss and it totally messes my day up. I could have had all stuff planned, mapped out, to-do list, thinking list, and none of it gets done. And you go again tomorrow because something's just come into it. And as much as sometimes you go, that's terrible, you learn to love it, because that's the dynamic part of it, the new, the learning, the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. You know, there is a lot of it is problem solving. It really is. You're putting out, some days might just be, I'm putting out fires all day. That's literally what, you know, like you kind of summed it up perfectly. You've come in with here is 12 things I'm going to achieve this morning. I'm going to make this phone call. I'm going to do this, place this purchase order. And then you get you know, for example, I had a call saying I had 10 pallets of wine sitting in the middle of a shipping dock. It's 30 degrees outside and my wines are just cooking, right? You go, right, Forget everything we're doing. Get on the phone, and we need to get that on a trolley, on a truck, and we need to get it moving. So a lot of it is kind of putting out fires, and you have, it again, dovetails perfectly into what Jack said. If the passion for the product doesn't exist, you'll find that a nightmare. But if you love what you do and you have that genuine passion for, I actually get excited about, right, okay, right, here's the problem, we're going to make this go away. Let's sit down and kind of rack our brains and really kind of, you know, dive in this and try and solve it as best we can. And then, you know, at the end of the day, crack open a bottle of something. That's, you know, again, that's a huge perk. You have a tough day, at the end of the day, open a bottle of whatever it might be, bourbon, amazing bottle of wine, sit back and go, right, that's done. We'll do it all over again tomorrow.
Yeah, I think, sorry, Max, I think sometimes too that all that goes away when you get a customer that rings up and says, Brad, thank you. I know that was a lot of work to get that done, but I'm so appreciative because I could service my customers, and that often makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
Right? And that resets you then for the next couple of months.
Perfect. Agree. Couldn't agree more. Jack, let's swing back your way. I mean, listen, the drink industry has been badly bruised, much like most parts of, you know, every other industry, by the pandemic and by lockdown. What are some of the things which you're kind of looking forward to the year ahead? You know, we've got, you know, the lockdown rules are easing, you know, trade borders, some borders are beginning to relax. What are some of the things which you're really looking forward to getting stuck in the next kind of 12 to 18 months, Jack?
That's a nice question, Max. Thank you. It's a bit of positivity, isn't it? So I think from my point of view, look, the last year's been incredibly tough. I think a lot of us have had to learn to adapt to things that we probably should have adapted to a long time ago. And I think you've seen that across a lot of industries. You know, from our point of view, I used to be 5 days a week in the office. I was in today, but I'm generally 1 or 2 days tops. I think what that's also done is made people realize that wine can be quite insular. You can work in, particularly in our kind of stores, you work in your little teams. I know a lot of kind of importers have pretty small teams doing quite big roles.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what the kind of advent of Zoom and kind of being able to connect to people more easily has done is it's actually created more community in a lot of cases. So an example for us is, you know, we used to get our store teams together twice a year, and we'd have big conferences and we'd book a hotel for everyone, and we'd book a conference suite, and we'd get everyone from all over the country, from Inverness and Falmouth and wherever, and we'd get them all to one location. We're now doing monthly updates for all our managers, because the first conference we were like, oh, well, we've got to do this online. And then suddenly we realized that actually we could be doing this every single month, and everyone in the business could be getting all the same insight. So now it's everyone in the office is seeing the same information as everyone in the stores, as everyone in our commercial on trade team, as everyone in Majestic France. And, you know, that's quite amazing. And likewise, I think from a customer point of view, you know, wine tastings online, I think they've been a bit of a blessing. I think there's still a lot to learn with them. I think, you know, there's a lot happening, and I'd kind of encourage a lot of people to take them with a bit of a pinch of salt at the moment, because I think they're just going to continue to evolve, and I think they'll get more and more interactive. And I think it's really exciting kind of frontier, because, you know, one of the big things from us that we used to do is we'd open up our stores, we'd have bespoke tastings for kind of 10 people at a time or for 70 people at a time, and we'd flood customers through, and they'd go, yeah, lovely, thanks very much, and they'd move on, and by the end of the night they can't really remember what they've tried. But when you're in your own home and you're taking a bit of time to actually interact with somebody, and you've taught someone how to do Zoom properly, and you've, you know, got interactive elements like Q&As and this kind of thing,
polls, quizzes,
yeah, exactly, you know, and all of a sudden you can do it from the comfort of your own home, and you don't have to worry about getting a taxi home or whatever it is. And also, I think, you know, this is another great example of areas in which, you know, the wine industry is just looking outwards a bit more, and I think that's only going to expand. You know, the technology's been there for a few years now, but
just have to,
you know, exactly. So I think it's exciting. And then, sorry, I could go on for ages, but the final point about that is that actually we feel more connected to our suppliers and our winemakers than we've ever done before, because whereas we'd used to do, you know, we'd get a supplier over to the UK once every 5 years. They'd go to London and maybe Bristol, maybe Manchester. They'd do tastings for 15 store managers. And if you were lucky enough to be there, great, you got a really good interactive experience. Instead, we've been doing every single Wednesday a different supplier from across the globe on Zoom. You know, 150 of our store managers, they've opened a bottle as their team, they've sat down, the 4 of them, and they've watched a winemaker tell them about the wine. and take their questions. And that's just, you know, that's such a big difference. It's such a big connection between you selling the product to a consumer who comes into your store and having the words of a winemaker actually ringing in your ear, and being able to kind of actually give them the vision and all the nuances and everything that go with it. You know, it's educational, it's entertaining, and it actually is helping to inform people. It's the BBC. No, so it's a really powerful tool, and I think it's a really nice way of kind of finally bridging that connection actually between kind of winemakers themselves and members of the public in a way that we've just probably never really managed to do before.
In the past, yeah. And more importantly, it's cheap to do. You know, no one has to book a flight. No one has to. Worry
and it's better for the.
So
it's better for the environment as well, which is just as important. So
the other thing I've spotted as well out of this, I don't know why we just got so bogged down in this idea that we need to go to an office 9 to 5, 5 days a week. I don't know why we just thought that's the only way we could operate. And I think this has just opened up so many. You know, our team, for example, all work remotely. It frees up a lot of personal time because you're not spending an hour and a half in the morning commuting to a location and an hour and a half commuting back. You can wake up, have a cup of coffee, relax. What we're seeing is people actually starting work earlier than before the pandemic because you're at home, you get up, you have a cup of coffee, you're relaxed, you get to your computer and you start answering your emails. And it improves the quality of life. It means there's less stress, there's less need to jump on rush hour tubes and so on. So we have seen, so much of a benefit, if we can call it that, for life post-pandemic. If I may come up to you, Elizabeth, how do you see kind of the wine industry in terms of the roles which are going to develop, I suppose, in the next 12 months? Where are some of the key areas which you're quite excited about recruiting for?
Absolutely. So, I mean, this has to be all about digital. And I mean, that really has been the watchword of the last 12 months, hasn't it? Whether you've liked it or not, really every single thing has moved online, and that's shopping, marketing. What are we doing right now? Exactly what Jack's just said, how they've completely pivoted all of this stuff online, and communication is better than before, and it's sustainable, which I think is a really, really important point, isn't it? We're not all getting on planes and trains and buses and whatnot. But digital, it's been so interesting how this has flourished and developed over the last 12 months. Now, if I just take the wine side of the industry, I think it's fair to say that most companies within the UK in the wine industry weren't overly techy. No. Some, there's a range, but I would say most of them just sort of thought, we don't really need that, particularly if they didn't really have the D2C revenue stream. If it was B2B, most people just said, well, we're fine as we are, thank you very much, and continued. And they were, absolutely. But I know of companies, and these are all the big names we know, the wine agencies who've spent the last year pivoting there and creating a D2C revenue stream. Now, some are successful, some are less so, but what has happened in that time is that we've now got this wealth of digital experience on the sales side, and very importantly, on the marketing side. Now, within wine in marketing, it's a fundamentally different animal to, say, spirits marketing. They're really two different beasts. And actually, interestingly, I would say that those digital marketing skills existed quite well in spirits before this. Perhaps not quite as much as the forefront they are now, but they were much more there than in wine. Wine marketing has tended to be much more events led. But I've seen all these amazing people in wine marketing go, you know what? I don't know anything about this, and I now need to, because we're getting our producers in every Wednesday, and we need to do this, and that, and we need to remain current. I was doing digital roles last April. Clients were coming to me, the ones who really spotted this and going, right, get me a digital marketing person. And I was like, in wine, wow, right. We're literally talking about 10 people. Now I am doing digital marketing roles coming out of my ears. I am talking to huge numbers of people, and these are all the people you wouldn't have thought. They're the traditional wine marketing people, and they have taught themselves. They've done courses. I mean, these people are incredible. This industry, the wine industry, I have never seen something pivot so quickly. It's really at the forefront now. And so anyone wanting to add anything to their skill set right now, I think it's all digital. If there's a digital course out there, do it.
Take it.
Particularly if you're in marketing, this will not go to waste, and it is just going to flourish.
And just kind of buttressing that, and again, linking to a point which Brad made, more often than not, wine industry or spirits industry, we will teach you WSET, we will teach you spirits courses. What we're less likely to do is teach you digital marketing or teaching you, you know, brand marketing and stuff like that. I'm sure some guys do it, or some companies do it. So yes, if there's something worth investing in, it's definitely worth investing. And again, it goes back to the point which both Jack and Brad have made about transferable skills. Now, if you're a digital marketer in the city, the wine industry needs you. You know, you don't need any WSETs. We will handle that.
That's an area you can slide over. Definitely.
Without, it's a lateral move. There is no need for, you know. So yes, listen, thank you all so much. We've got a lot of questions, as you can imagine. We've got over 37, 38 different questions, and we've got about half an hour. So we're not going to answer, it's not possible. You know, this chat will carry on for the next hour or so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of fire through them and point them your direction. Please, if your question does not get answered, do not feel offended. It's the nature of the beast. We've got such a limited amount of time. So we've got one from, let me just pick one at random, from Reza. Reza says, how useful are WSET qualifications in terms of the industry? I believe we've answered that. It's useful, but it's not the kind of be all and end all. We've got another one that says, how important is a second language? I think that's quite a pertinent one. Jack, sorry, random. How important would you say a second language is, thinking about wine in a global kind of spectrum?
Did you see my GCSE results? Is that why you did something? I honestly, I probably quite important in certain roles. I have abysmal French, and that is it, which I'm quite ashamed of, to be honest. It depends what you want to get into. I mean, you know, I've seen a couple of jobs up recently, and I think maybe with the kind of, I don't know, Brexit impact, people trying to look for more people based on the continent as well. I don't know if Elizabeth's got any kind of experience of that, but yeah, I would say it definitely cannot help. It definitely opens doors that you would otherwise be closed. I mean, when I've looked at jobs in the past with kind of a second language, you know, I felt out of my depth, and I felt like it's something I should really look at. So I think it's definitely an asset. It's not it just depends where you want to go into. You know, buyers, you know, most of our buyers, I think off the top of my head, do not have second languages. But, you know, whether that's whether that stops them being able to go to certain places or deal with certain producers, I would doubt it in this day and age. But, you know, it's certainly not going to help. Not harm, sorry.
The point I'll make is, again, we come back to this point of technology. We have the technology. You know, we can speak to people who we have no idea what they're saying. You send me an email in full-on Italian, I can have it translated in the next kind of couple of seconds. So, you know, it's important to kind of jump into that, Jack. Where I found, because I speak French proficiently, and where I found it kind of helped was actually in the studying part of it. You know, it's looking at a wine label and being able to kind of deduce. That's pretty much the end of, you know, my French. We've got another question here from Alina, who says, it's for all the panelists. If I come to Elizabeth, what does your toughest day look like? Brad answered this, so what is the toughest day for Elizabeth look like?
A tough day for me?
Yes, please.
So I guess my job is actually, it doesn't have lots of moving parts to it, really. It's about getting clients and getting candidates. I kind of just do two things, really, to be honest. And I think a really bad day for me is when I don't get my placements. So, you know, we put in a lot of time and effort to get the right candidates. We'll have a huge amount of conversations, as I alluded to earlier. And, you know, people are really well within their rights to say, I was interested, and now I'm not interested. And that happens all the time. And that's absolutely fine. I'm not one of those recruiters who's going to get cross with you. In fact, I really try and go completely the other way and go, do you know what? That's absolutely fine. And I'm glad you've got your, you know, dream role, because it's about putting in the right role. It's so much easier when people just tell me that they're in lots of other processes and they're about to get an offer. And if
then
they
you don't spend all your time.
I've just put them in for a job and I think, yeah, great, they're the one. And then they go, no, I've just got an offer. And I'm thinking, oh, I wish you'd told me that. That's probably a bad day for me,
Yeah.
you know. But then that's my job, and I need to get back on it and go out and find another correct person, you know. So at the end of the day, it's a very nice job. I get to speak to lots and lots of really nice people all day long, very, very pertinent to this industry, interesting, passionate, fun people, and I really enjoy all my conversations. I wish I could help all of them, and actually that's something that always sits a little heavily on me, that the amount of times I have to say, no, this is not for you, is a bit tough sometimes, but I try and be fairly kind. Yeah.
Brad, I've got one which is really kind of on vogue. It's on topic. How has Brexit affected the industry? You know, how has Brexit, the wine industry, actually both from one from Brad and one from Jack. How has Brexit affected the spirits industry, Brad?
You know, probably the interim piece is probably talent. So where, you know, it was easy to come over from the EU to the UK, it's a lot harder sponsoring people. You know, you've got limited numbers, there's hurdles we've got to jump through. We don't set those rules, unfortunately, around you know, what the minimum criteria is for sponsorship. So certainly there's a you know, there will be that strain on talent over time in the short term until it resets. From a spirits point of view, I would say we certainly seem to be coping better with the adjustments than the wine industry. We've had a few more bumps, and then that's probably just, you know, some background around some documentation, etc., that it's a little easier. You know, Jack's probably better placed to answer some of the challenges on wine, but you know, for me, it's probably, you know, people in the short term, where, you know, you could certainly, you know, EU was much easier to have a job here locally.
Source talent from.
So yeah, that's going to be a short term, and you know, does that transgress in medium term potentially? But in terms of wine, certainly for Jack.
Yeah, I was just going to dovetail over to Jack. Brexit, how has that affected the state of play?
I'm just going to have to be very straight back on this. I think it's very early to say. I think, you know, it's certainly an issue with kind of some key hauliers we're seeing, but it's not necessarily the legislation. It's more just
logistics,
the logistics, and being on the front foot. And you know, I think the long-term effects will probably won't know for some time.
Fab. And again, I'll jump on that. So I couldn't agree more. Just to kind of finish up that point, I can kind of throw some numbers in it. In the past, you know, it would be from EU, pick up week 1, deliver week 2. So, you know, would order a wine and it would picked up this week from any part in the EU and it would be delivered the next week. Now we're kind of looking at pick up week 1, deliver week 3, possibly week 4. So it might not sound like a lot, but it is a lot is the short answer. You know, it then puts extra challenge on managing stock. It means ordering more stock, but if you order more stock, there is an actual cost for holding that extra stock. So it does have a, you know, there is a, you know, it's more an annoyance rather than things, you know, everything kind of completely falling apart. We had a question come in, Elizabeth. I think this one might be more suitable for you. Kind of, for a woman trying to break into the wine industry, do you think it's harder, it's tougher? What are some of the advices you might give for a young person, an old person, a woman trying to break into the industry?
Well, very on trend, you know, with International Women's Day yesterday. I think as an industry, the drinks industry is very, very good for women. I mean, I've worked in recruiting in the city. I've worked in recruiting in commodities trading. They're quite dominated by men, and it's perhaps a little more closed and not quite so easy to break into. But I've found that drinks is welcoming, very welcoming to women. I think particularly on the sales and marketing side, they've always been a part of the drink industry where you've been able to work from home, and there's been a great deal of flexibility. And as a result of it, you see a lot of senior sales women in drinks holding fantastic jobs, controllers, head of sales and marketing, because you have that lovely flexibility. So when do they get to that 30s, early 40s, they've got the kids, they've got all of the logistics of that. They don't need to bow out because someone's saying they have to be in the office every day. It's also a really gorgeous product. It's a fun product. It's not a product that necessarily, I don't know, left brain, right brain, whatever it might be, super mathsy or whatever. It's just all about the interest and in terms of the exams and, you know, Master of Wine. It's about the level of effort you want to put in. But it's very, very friendly and as an industry. And, you know, there are particular challenges that face women and with children, slotting those into your life. And that will have an impact on travel, I think, particularly. So if you're in a very travel heavy part, but I think there's plenty of parts you can go into, grocery sales, on-trade sales, you know, there's a lot of women in these parts, lots of women in marketing doing fabulous things. You know, some of the incredible brands have come from women in these industries.
Agreed.
And, you know, they've done a super job.
Agreed. Fab. Okay, let me take a couple more questions. Just check the time. We have a few more minutes. We have a question which I think might be more pertinent to you, Jack. What advice would you give for someone who's looking to start their own wine shop in the UK? Thoughts?
Great question. I think, you know, researching your local area is incredibly important. I think we've got, as I've said, 200 stores across the UK. Every single one of them is different. Every single one of them has a slightly different range because of that. You know, you really need to get to grips with the local demographic, look at maybe what the kind of restaurants are, think about your wine list, think about what people might be kind of drinking it with. I think key relationships with some kind of suppliers from the start. I mean, we've got wines in the Majestic range that have been stocked since the 1980s and have stayed with us right the way through. And those relationships are just absolutely invaluable because, you know, you know, I was actually on a seminar the other day with someone from the Wine Society, and they were talking about they always have to, you know, one up us, but they were talking about they had a champagne supplier from 150 years ago, and, you know, just incredible relationships that they've, you know, and they have exclusivity on that, and, you know, it's great for the supplier and it's great for you because, you know, you've got that kind of level of trust. And I think getting yourself up with a number of kind of key suppliers from the off who can grow with you as well is really quite important. And then just think about, I suppose, doing things a bit differently and how you're going to set up. And, you know, we were founded in 1980 when we were one of the first people who offered tastings, and it still feels quite innovative in places, and people still come in and be like, oh, I can just try that, can I? And, you know, it's just, it feels like such an obvious thing to us, but it's because it's part of our DNA. But actually, you know, there are other ways you could do it. There's different ways of merchandising. There's things you can do a little bit differently that might just spark someone's imagination and tempt someone in. And then just avoid being too whiny, I guess. It depends on the kind of audience you're trying to bring in. But, you know, try not to be the place where people feel intimidated, I guess, would be my.
No one likes to snob.
Yeah, and it's one of the things people, you know, like to say about our stores, which really resonates, is that we like to see ourselves as the kind of bridge between the supermarkets and the indies. We try and bring people in and educate consumers and you know, set them free on the shelves of the indies or whatever. And I think it's a nice role to have, and it works for us, but, you know, everywhere's going to be different, I guess.
Fab. Thank you so much, Jack. Quite a table shaking question here, or kind of one to agitate. I've got one from Drew Mullins. I apologize if I don't get that surname correct, but it's somewhat more from Drew, who says the hospitality industry was labeled as unskilled, parenthesis, in the UK in recent years. Elizabeth, where's your stance in this? Looking at, you know, one for Elizabeth and one on Brad. Where's your stance in kind of the hospitality industry being labeled as being unskilled? What are your thoughts on that?
Is that label from over the last 12 months? Is that a sort of government? Is that a sort of? I don't know.
It's just kind of been inverted, and it says that was specifically in the UK. I will suspect yes, but I'm not going to put my name to it.
I mean, I'd really disagree. You know, it's such an important industry, and it is absolutely hammered. I mean, it's just, you know, it's almost it's bloodied and bowed, isn't it? And we all hope it's going to rise up like a sort of phoenix. But, you know, there is a very specific set of skills to be dealing with people who are drinking. They want it now. They want the advice. They want the lovely service. I don't know how anyone can say it's unskilled. It's got a very specific and rare and difficult to come by set of skills. You know, it's incredibly hard work and not paid very well at all. Within the drinks industry, it's a very, very well-worn route to the corporate side. So, you know, through the shops, for example, Majestic, Oddbins, whatever, and then through hospitality. I mean, particularly, and Brad might be able to talk a bit more like this, but particularly on the spirit side, premium and craft spirits, that whole revolution we've seen over the last, let's say, 8 to 10 years, there was a point in the market a few years ago that clients were coming to me and saying, I want a very specific set of skills in spirits, and they weren't there because those markets hadn't quite developed to those second, third jobbers, and actually where they needed to look was those super passionate people writing blogs, working behind the bars, knowing exactly what the consumers wanted. And that's how, it goes back right, we spoke about this right at the beginning, didn't we, about what the consumers want. And it's an absolutely essential route in. It does tend to be a route that sort of younger people will take into the industry. But to say that it's unskilled is, I think, unfair.
Interesting. Brad, any kind of any addition to that? Any addition to?
No, only that I agree totally with Elizabeth, Max. I think it's to call it unskilled. I think is well off the mark. An insult. A lot of the people I encounter are highly skilled across a number of areas, and if you've ever served someone and there's something wrong with their meal, or their pint's not poured properly, or they think their wine's off, it's a skill set in itself to be able to deal with that.
Manage that,
or if you come on to the supply side, etc. Whether it's what Elizabeth was talking about before around digital, or look at the rise of e-com or the omni-channel, massive skill sets required. So I think that's well off the mark.
Fab. Jack, for someone, I got a question from Lucy Stevenson, who says, for someone coming out of school, college or university, what subjects do you think are relevant to wines or spirits? What would you say? I mean, if you could go back, Jack, and kind of speak to, I don't know, 17-year-old, 18-year-old Jack and say, I see you 10, 20 years time down the line, you're going to be in the wine industry. What subjects do you wish you would have studied?
I think, firstly, we've kind of, with our various backgrounds, proven that actually there's no set way. I think you can kind of go, I think communication in my role has been incredibly important. And actually, I had a very candid conversation with my parents when I went to university and said, look, I'm just going to go do something that I'm interested in, because otherwise, I would struggle to commit myself to 3 years of study if it was something I was just doing to tick a box. And I was quite lucky and supported in that, but I'm glad I did it, because actually what that taught me was about communicating about something I'm passionate about, which has actually been quite useful. I think the language is a great point. I really wish that was something I was better at. And I think also from MW studies, the big area I'm missing is just a good basic plant biology, and just a really good understanding of and chemistry as well, and fermentation and oh no, I'm terrible.
One specifically for recruitment. So I wonder who this is going to go to, Elizabeth. Megan has asked, are there any specific wine jobs, wine websites, platforms? That's probably something which I'm sure you come across in your daily routine. Someone looking for a wine role, where should they go?
Yeah, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? Because these parts of any market are so fragmented. You've got jobs that are advertised, and then you've got jobs that are not ever advertised. It's so super tricky. My advice to everyone is always find maybe 2, probably 3 agencies you like. Any more than that, you're really going to struggle to remember who you've spoken to and remember who represents you. But with one agency only, you're not going to get, they work with a group of clients. They're not ever going to work with all clients in a sector, because, to put it bluntly, we have to take people from some companies and put them in other companies. So if they're all our clients, we're unable to do that. So we can only have a certain number of clients. So if you want to get that coverage, you really need to be with 2 or 3. Absolutely keep on top of it though, because and I'm sure there are not many companies like this in the drink sector. I don't think there are, but there are some recruitment companies that might send your CV out without you knowing. That's absolutely forbidden now under GDPR. It's a very bad practice. So, for example, if Brad got CV from 2 different agents, that's a tricky thing for him, because they're both going to be saying to him, they're my candidate, I want to get paid. It's a headache for him. He doesn't want that. He's going to go, I'm not going to work with either of you. And then
either of them, then everyone else loses that.
But in terms of specifics, obviously an agency like mine, but there are other very good ones. Fluid Fusion is another one in drinks. They approach it from a very slightly different area to us. They are a slightly different types of roles, and they are a bit more high volume. Obviously, the WSET job site itself is a bit of a central place, I think, where everyone gravitates to. I think adverts on the drinks business. I actually came across a new thing that I didn't know before: wine jobs. Wine Jobs UK,
Oh
Wine
God,
Jobs
yes,
America.
they were saved, they were bookmarked all those years ago.
Yeah, I didn't know it existed. Actually, I think one of my roles ended up on it and I didn't even know, but that's absolutely fine. But there are various ways. Also, the really old-fashioned way, talk to people in your network. You know, it's those hidden jobs sometimes. There's a number of ways.
Thank you so much. Jack, I've got one which I think might be really, really interesting for you. What advice would you give to someone? I think this is something which we can kind of bounce back and forth. What advice would you give to someone who wants to move out of that shop floor role? It might be kind of front of house role in terms of the on-trade, but kind of you've been in shop floor for a while. How do you kind of navigate your way out of that? Any advice, any tips?
Yeah, it's quite a pertinent one for us because I think we'll hit a bit of a glass ceiling, really. My main advice would be talk to people, get some shadowing, reach out to people, look at getting mentoring, you know, find a way of bridging those connections. And you might have to take a bit of a pay cut. You might have to kind of do some out of hours working. From my point of view, I don't know if there's anyone from Majestic on the call, but you know, I've been in my role and I personally think it's quite a cool role. I deal with wine critics for a living and, you know, get wines on Saturday kitchen and do all that stuff. I think it's quite interesting. Nobody has asked me in 5 years to come and do any shadowing of my role, which I find really quite interesting.
Right, interesting.
You know, and I work for a retailer with 1,100 people on the shop floor. So I think sometimes it is okay to just reach out to someone and just say, hey, sorry to invade your inbox, you know, just a heads up, I would really like to do what you do one day. How can I come and do this?
Yeah.
Can I come and see what you do? Can I get some experience? And funnily enough, I'm now recruiting for a role in my team. And all of a sudden I've got kind of 10 people saying, oh, I really want to, and I'm well, I've never heard from you before.
Yeah, you should have, you claim to have such interest in this role, but you've not reached out. I'll jump off the back of that. And you made such a pertinent point about kind of taking a step back to take a step forward. Having been in the shop floor, I spent, I think, 8 to 9 years in the shop floor while going through my WSET. So it's something which I can kind of lend a helping hand to. At one point, I had to cut down on my shop floor hours to go do exactly what you said, Jack, which was shadowing. You know, I wanted to go into sales. And every time I applied for a sales role, well, you have no sales experience. You have no sales experience. Right. How do I get sales experience? I went and worked for someone who paid me commission only. It's fine. I've got my shop floor role, which is, you know, it kind of covers my bills. I've got my hours from there. And then I work 2 days a week, which I'm shadowing you and I'm getting that real life sales experience. And off the back of that, that's how I actually got my job at Majestic, which was actually, you know, at the old King's Cross. I don't know if it still exists. It was a B&I branch in King's Cross, because I'd gone out and I'd done that for about a year, 2 years, got that real life sales experience of pounding the pavements, dragging my case of 12 samples, going, you know, shop to shop, bar to bar, trying to sell wine. But that's how, you know, again, we all mentioned this point. There's no cutting corners and there's no, you know, you just got to do the hard graft at some point. A good one for Brad here talks about internships and graduate schemes. Is that something which Campari is doing? Is that something which Campari plans to do? Brad, thoughts?
Yeah, Max, we've got an intern program at the moment based out of Italy. So, you know, but we're also looking at, you know, as we grow in different markets, how do we localize an internship program? Because it's, you know, it's important for, you know, I'm a big one for bringing talent into the industry. You know, spoke about that transferable skills, because if it's a spirits industry or wine industry, we only recycle the talent amongst us, not bringing in the new talent, right? And it all does come down to team balance and team dynamics. You can't have a team of everyone that has a massive load of experience and huge aspiration, which is great, but all want to be promoted. So, you know, getting that, you know, nice balance of the team around experience in the industry, non-experience is important. So, yeah, we will look locally over the next kind of 6 months. There's some stuff in progress of what a local internship kind of graduate program will look like. But at the moment, we've got a global one based out of Italy, which from memory, I think it's about 15 places a year. And it's a pretty good program because you get to go and live in 3 markets for 6 months each.
Yes, please.
Yeah, it's yeah. So like you're a 20-year-old person, you live in Oz for 6 months or New York, etc.
Yeah.
So it's a fantastic program.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brad. Listen, I'm really conscious of our time and I don't want to park the bus perfectly, not undershoot or overshoot it. If your question has not been answered, I do apologize. We've got to kind of put a bow on it and wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. I thank our wonderful panelists. Thank you for your time. I know you guys are all, all incredibly busy. So thank you so much for giving your time up to come and chat with the next generation of talent. I'm going to hand that over to Julia. Julia, you with us?
I'm still here. I've been listening along. Yeah, all I want to echo is your thanks to everyone. It's been really good to hear your stories, your expertise, and also thanks to you, Mags. It's been great to have you guiding us through all these different questions, all these different areas, and to hear your story as well, because obviously you're someone that's got many different hats that you wear at various times with all the work that you do. So really good to be able to hear from you too. If anyone has any desperate questions that we didn't answer, do feel free to get in touch and we can try and get to them later. Otherwise, thank you all for coming, and we will sign off here.
Fab. Thank you all. Cheers. Have a good evening or good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Take care again.
See you everyone. Bye-bye.